So geeking cool.
Hey, I'm Frank.
And I'm Derrick.
Welcome to another episode of So Geeking Cool, Episode 2.
Correct.
Captain's Log, Stardate. I don't know what the correct stardate would be today. Sorry for all my Star Trek fans out there. I'm a fan. I'm just off my game today. Today, we're actually going to be talking about costuming versus cosplay, and we're going to be talking a little bit of cosplay etiquette. Again, we're getting ready to go to Pensacon.
Correct. So it's kind of like some do's and don'ts. I know I definitely need to be, brought up to speed on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, me too. I think the first thing I can say, the difference between costuming and cosplaying is costuming is normally what you do on Halloween, right?
Okay.
You throw on a costume and you go and have fun, and you may or may not act like the character.
Okay.
Cosplay is a little more involved, right? It's a little more, you actually try to become the character to some degree, or you're trying to show off certain aspects of the character. So it's costuming and playing, right?
Okay.
So that's how the word came about. I know in some places you actually, if you're a part of the cosplay competitions, you actually have to get on stage and do a little skit or maybe act out.
Maybe recite a line or something, favorite line out of the movie or something?
Just something, yeah.
Okay.
I've been in a few cosplay contests. I've actually won one, believe it or not, amateur category. But yeah, I actually got first place. But it was me and my son Franklin, and we won first place together. And he was actually wearing my Indiana Jones costume, and I was wearing a Rick O'Connell costume from The Mummy, Brendan Fraser's character, and which is funny because that's his favorite character, and Indiana Jones was one of my favorite characters. So we had actually swapped, and we were doing the opposite.
Okay.
And one of my best friends, Kevin, went down with us, and he was rooting us on from the crowd. It was great.
Now, do they do and do they do any of that at Pensacon?
They do. They
competition?
actually they have a really big
Okay.
competition there,
Okay.
and it's really cool. We'll check it out. Actually, you'll get a chance to see it. But when we went on stage there at that particular convention, there was an interview section on the stage with the MC, and we got to recite lines.
Okay.
And it was kind of funny because we kind of played off of each other, and the guest at that particular convention actually was in the movie The Mummy, which was kind of cool because right before we had gone on stage, we had the opportunity to meet him, and he was just, taken back by my costume. He was like, "Man, you put a lot of detail into this, and it looks great." He said, "It looks just like what Brendan Fraser was wearing on the set." So that kind of gave me a boost, man. I went in, I kind of walked on stage like I was Rick O'Connell, right? And it worked out great. It was a good experience for me and a good experience for Franklin. Great bonding time.
Okay, cool.
But I will say that everybody who has ever cosplayed, especially if they were going to be in a competition, something they can all relate to is I don't know if I've coined this term, but I use this term a lot. I say procrastination, and it's really just procrastinating, but for a con.
Okay. I like that. It has a nice ring to it.
Right. I mean, everybody in the costuming world or the cosplay world loves the shopping phase, right? Oh man, I'm doing all this research and I'm finding all this cool stuff. You're guilty of it. I've seen you do it here recently, right?
Correct.
We're not going to say how much anybody ever spends on cosplay. That's a forbidden topic. We're both married and would like to stay that way. But that's the great part. But then the actual putting it together or having to do the sewing or having to do the sanding or the filing or the painting, that's all, it's fun, but it's all kind of work too, right? So you put it off. And I usually plan my characters out several months in advance. I know you've been planning your two characters for quite a while now.
Yeah, for quite a while.
And you've just recently gotten all the stuff you need for Orlando.
Correct.
and you're having it commissioned right now, right?
Correct.
So,
Very excited about it. When you first mentioned about the contest, I would like to enter one to just kind of do the little and I know
no, I think that's fantastic. I mean,
uh,
they're real big on accuracy, so. Lando just has a mustache. I'm just pointing that out.
yeah, I don't know.
You were saying?
But no, I was thinking about the scene when Lando and Hans, the scene where they meet, right? So I'm gonna be doing some watching to try and embody it to the T.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I strongly recommend that. Research is always great. But what typically happens with that, the procrastination part is you buy everything, you set it in the corner, and then the con's 6 months away. It's 5 months away. It's 4 months away. It's 3 months away. Oh, God, it's in 2 weeks, and I haven't even started my costume. And then you furiously try to get it all put together, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to our second term, con crunch. I think every cosplayer has experienced con crunch, if not just once, but several times.
Okay.
And that's where you have put it off. You've procrastinated to the point where the con's right around the corner, and you've got to get this costume finished. Sometimes you go through con crunch even when you haven't procrastinated. Sometimes things just didn't work out exactly the way you planned. Sometimes you have a malfunction.
Yeah.
If you're going to your first convention or if you've been to a convention before, always test your equipment right before the con. Don't wait until you're at the convention. Don't wait till you're checking into your hotel room. Certainly do a check then also, but do a check before you leave. You need to make sure you have fresh batteries. You need to make sure that if you have electronic components that they're working, make sure no light bulbs have burned out. Make sure no solder has come loose. I've had that happen before. Always a good idea to have a punch list, right?
Yeah, and that's something that you've kind of got it been through, and you would say, hey, you need to, try and work on this, So I'm guilty of procrastination and also a little crunch as well. So
yeah, because we're less than 30 days away.
Yeah, correct. And I'm not ready yet, but we're almost there.
Almost there.
Yeah.
Like Bon Jovi says, we're living on a prayer. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Another term that you'll hear a lot at conventions is cosplay is not consent, right?
And so what do you mean by that?
Well, what that means is if you see someone in a really cool costume, you don't run up and start snapping pictures without asking, right?
Okay.
Just because they're in a costume doesn't mean that they consent to be in your pictures or in your videos. Okay. They don't consent for you to touch them. Probably one of the worst things you can do is to run up and touch anybody's props or their costume without asking.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, a lot of people put a lot of time and a lot of effort into these costumes. And some of these parts are very fragile. They look stronger than they are. And the last thing you want to do is ruin somebody's hard work by being overzealous.
Right.
Another thing that you kind of want to think about too is not everybody has the same tolerance levels for big crowds. There are a lot of people that I know who are cosplayers. My wife's one of them who gets claustrophobic in a big crowd, and you have to be mindful of that. You want to give people their space,
right?
So always ask if you're going to go up and take a picture and you want to do a cool pose. Ask them first. Hey, is it cool if we do this pose? Is it cool if we do that? I can tell you from personal experience that there's a lot of costumes that I have that it's very hard to hear or very hard to see because I'm in a full helmet, and people will want you to interact a certain way, and they don't really communicate that to you, and you don't really know what's going on sometimes. So they either need to talk to your handler if you have a handler, or they need to make sure that they've communicated it to you in some way.
Now, handler for those who may be viewing and don't know.
Typically, a handler goes like when I'm in my Darth Vader costume. I really have a very limited view. I can't move my head a whole lot. I can't hear very well. Uh, the the lenses are have a reddish tint to them, so it's low light inside the helmet. Plus, I've got fans to try to keep me cool, so all I can hear in my ears are these. I mean, they're low noise fans, but they still make some noise. So a handler usually is somebody who is not in costume, or if they are, they're in a very basic costume, who can lead the person around and kind of communicate to the outside world for them.
Okay.
And it's always a good idea if you see someone with a handler to try to communicate with the handler, because that's what they're there for.
Okay, good deal.
And another thing to remember too is if somebody's taking pictures with somebody else, kind of wait your turn. And you don't have to sneak pictures off to the side. I mean, sometimes there are some really cool shots that are going on, and you'll have a group of people stop to take photos, and that's perfectly fine. But be mindful of the aisles, because in the conventions, everything's so close and it's kind of cramped quarters. And you've got people trying to shop at these vendors' sites, and you don't want to be rude to the vendors and block them from doing business.
Right.
And you want to keep the flow going for safety. I mean, you never know. Always look to just kind of get off to the side, and people are usually very gracious and don't mind if you kind of step off to the side. And don't be afraid as a cosplayer. That's another good piece of advice. You can say, give me just a minute, or hold on 1 second, or meet me over here and I'll take the picture in just a second, because it never fails. You'll take off your helmet, you'll take off your armor, whatever you're wearing, and as soon as you get to the last piece, you've removed everything, you're about to take your bite of a hamburger because you're starving to death, you haven't eaten all day, somebody walks up and like, oh my God, that's such a cool costume, can I take a picture with you? Give me just a second.
Yeah.
And that's not being rude. And most people are completely cool with that. So keep that in mind. Another good tip, before we go too far, stay hydrated. And that brings me to a tip that you asked me about. You remember what it was?
I think it was about the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember that story you told in the first episode about lines?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's so important. So be mindful. Although you want to be hydrated, be mindful of the levels liquid intake, because some costumes could be a little hectic getting out of, and also the lines to use the restroom could be long. So you definitely want to be mindful. But I think out of all of what you said, or what I've heard you say thus far, you just want to be respectful, and respect someone's space, and just ask. And so I'm glad for the do's and don'ts, the tips, what have you, because now we didn't have this discussion when I went to Mississippi Con, so I was kind of following the lead of someone or anyone I saw in front of me, because there was a couple pictures that I took of some cosplayers there, where I asked, do you mind? No, but yeah, I think that's very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. Always ask, and that's something else that you'll encounter. That's another term that's kind of in the cosplay community, is gender bend. That's a type of cosplay where if you see someone who is portraying a character that's traditionally been of the opposite sex, they're still portraying that character. For instance, like if you see someone, maybe a girl who's portraying Superman, she's not portraying Supergirl, she's actually cosplaying a Superman.
Right.
Or I've seen people, girls who cosplay as Jason from Friday the 13th, or different things like that. They're not doing a female version of the character, they're doing their version of the character. And there are people who do their own interpretations of characters. You have people from the different communities, the LGBT communities who maybe portray a character a certain way, and ask. No one's going to be offended if you ask. They're actually probably going to be really delighted to be able to tell you about their version of the character.
To give you some insight.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
And just do it in a respectful way.
Right.
That's the number one. You're right. That's the number one thing about con etiquette is be respectful.
Right.
Anybody can cosplay anyone. There is no body type for cosplay. There is no gender for cosplay. There's no sexual orientation for cosplay. It is literally whatever you want to do. And the great thing about this community is it's welcoming. It embraces people and makes everybody feel like they're part of the community. And if you ever run into a situation at a convention where someone does make you feel uncomfortable, find someone from the con and let them know, because they will address it, and they'll address it very quickly, and they'll take care of it. And I promise you it won't be a problem going forward.
Cool.
And really, that's kind of the worst place you could do it, because you've got a bunch of people with hero complexes walking around, and they're just waiting to help out, right?
Yeah.
When you were talking about the bathroom, something I just thought of is also remember that if it takes you 30 minutes to put a costume on, it's going to take you 30 minutes to take that costume off. And some costumes, like my Rocketeer costume, it's very hard for me to try to get out of it by myself. I need someone to support the
So you
jet
need a
pack.
handler.
Right.
Okay.
And sometimes your handler can't go to the bathroom with you, so keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that it's always fun to go onto the vendor floor, and it's fun to go into Artist Alley. But if you have a particular panel that you need to go to, you need to have that mapped out, because typically most cons are going to have the times posted. Pensacon, for instance, has a trolley that takes you, because they have different events that are kind of spread out throughout downtown Pensacola. And one of the cool things is they provide that trolley. It's free of charge, and it will take you to any of the different venues that they have. So I'll also be mindful of dietary needs. Again, if you're diabetic, or if you're hypoglycemic, or if you have any kind of issues like that, then you need to remember to make sure you have plenty of food and anything that you would need to.
Correct. So sort of put a con checklist together to check off all the needs and make sure you have everything. Make sure that your costume or whatever is working properly before you get there.
Yeah. And remember, if you've liked these tips, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Again, Derrick and I will be at Pensacon, so Geeking Cool. So if you see us, by all means, come up, say hello, ask to take a picture. Let us take a picture of you if that's cool. We'll be posting some of this on our Facebook page and our Instagram. So just remember, you can find us on Facebook at So Geeking Cool. We're on YouTube at So Geeking Cool. Instagram. We have Twitter, but we're both old, so we don't tweet very much. We actually haven't even sent out our first tweet yet. So, yeah.
Procrastination.
And if you have any comments, if you have any ideas for our upcoming show,
or questions,
be sure to put those in the comments. And I promise one of us will read them and get back to you. And we will be finishing up our costuming series, because that's mainly what we're talking about right now is cosplay. But in the future videos, we're going to have some how-tos. We're going to have some information on how you can make things yourself for little to no money, which is actually something I learned from a good friend of mine, who I'll talk about in a future episode. And so got a lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we appreciate it, and we hope to see you again.
And it's been So Geeking Cool.
That's right.
So Geeking Cool.